So when I set up listings for consulting clients, I often start our conversation with questions around what do you like about your listing and what do you not like about your listing. Now, what you dislike about the listing is only important in how it pertains to other people's experience of the listing, and or what we as the landlords have an ethical responsibility to disclose before someone books that listing. And there's an ethical responsibility. There's also a make everyone happy responsibility, which doesn't necessarily fall under ethics, but it's not good business to have someone come in, surprise them with something, and then have a bad rental or a bad renting experience for the next 6 months. We want to avoid that. And so for that reason, we have to evaluate what we like about the property, what we don't like about the property, what ethically we need to disclose to potential renters, and then also what we need to disclose just to make everybody's life easier and happier. And with that, the renter feels that the right expectation was set for the property before they showed up. So an example of an ethical disclosure, so something where you would be maybe outside of the law or in a gray area, or at least have some explaining to do if you did not disclose, would be the location of security cameras. Anywhere that you have a security camera, it should be disclosed. And on Airbnb, they prompt you for this. On the other listings, they don't. But just make sure that the renter is crystal clear about where all of your exterior security cameras exist, and do not put any surveillance cameras inside the property. Second, an example of a nice to know would be that the unit requires climbing stairs. Even if you feel like the potential renter should understand this because of the way the photos have been set up and the fact that there's no promise of ranch living, I still think it's to your benefit and to the renter's benefit to make sure that it's called out multiple places in the listing. And you can do this in the captions. You can also do it in the description under a little other section where you just say, hey, just as a note, all of the bedrooms are upstairs, so this property does require climbing stairs. And the reason why that's a nice to know and not a mandatory is because, again, there's an argument that it's on them to have done that research or to look at your listing in a proper way so that they have that information before they ever show up. But regardless of whose responsibility it is, it will be your problem if they show up and then they're unhappy and then they don't want to stay there, or it's just a rental that doesn't really work for them. And then finally, let's talk about issues that aren't ideal about the property, but that you don't have to disclose. So I'm working with a new client right now, and her property is on a busy-ish street. And she keeps mentioning this, and she keeps wanting to put it into the listing. Now, she has also indicated to me that her daughter has said, it's not an issue, Mom. I don't think we need to put that in. I have had quite a few video calls with her from the property, and I have not noticed any loud traffic outside. And I also think that what is loud to one person is not loud to another person. And so you actually don't have an obligation to disclose that. But because it's such a subjective thing and it's not a make or break on the property, I don't feel that you need to disclose that. And in fact, I don't disclose it on my properties. And again, I feel okay about this because, for instance, my husband and I can sleep through anything, so it wouldn't bother us one bit. So I just kind of take that stance that other people are in that position, or if they are sensitive to sleep, they will ask me questions to prompt that discussion, because obviously I don't know all the concerns of the different renters coming in. And then finally, having clarity about why you like this property. Now, if you just bought the property, you should be able to articulate why you bought this property over another one. There's something that's different about your property. So for instance, there's laundry upstairs with all of the bedrooms, or there's an oversized garage. It has a really good proximity to the grocery store. When landlords write out like the top 5 things that are most appealing to them for their property, they have a good starting point when they are thinking about how to sell and pitch their property to renters. So just doing this tip will help you position your property in a way where you're calling out the best features that will appeal to most people, because it's what appeals to you. And so writing into the listing and writing into your marketing materials what you love most about this property can be a real hack for getting renters into the property. Moving into tip number 2. Okay, so a lot of landlords and new landlords are putting a lot of reliance on the algorithms to set up their listing. Kind of makes me smile, because when I look at how Airbnb does it, I'm like, there's still a use case for humans. And what I'm talking about here is that if you load your photos into Airbnb, or if you look at your competition in local markets in Airbnb, a lot of the main photos will just be the living room, and the living room's kind of beige or gray, and then it has a beige or gray couch. And when you look at a region and all of the photos come up that way, we can assume that the reason why that's happening is because landlords are dumping their photos into Airbnb. Airbnb is looking at other listings that have had success and then emulating what those listings have. And in this case, it is going to be that their first photo is a beige or gray living room with a beige or gray couch, which is just extremely visually boring. It reminds me of when I wanted to decrease my phone usage. So I put my phone in grayscale, meaning everything moved to black and white. And that actually really did help me decrease my phone usage, because there's just something in the brain where that's boring to look at. And same thing applies here. If you are a renter and you are looking for a monthly furnished rental and you see a bank of photos that are all gray beige living rooms with gray beige couches, none of them stand out. You want to be thoughtful about this and override the algorithm. It does not matter that the algorithm is recommending that. A gray beige boring photo is not the best lead photo. It will not pop off the page. So usually colors accomplish this. Before we move to the next tip, which is tip number 3, I just want to flag that if you don't know how to decorate a property, you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, just a few tips on this. One, if you're doing rugs, do the biggest rug that your space can accommodate and make sure that every piece of furniture, so for instance in a living room, make sure that every piece of furniture is touching that rug. It doesn't have to fully be on the rug, but the front legs or at least part of the couch needs to be touching the rug. The coffee table needs to touch the rug. Chairs need to touch the rug, etc. Second, and this is a big mistake that I see a lot of landlords make, they put up art just to put up art and the art doesn't match. So a way to get out of this is to just decorate your place in oversized mirrors and oversized fake plants. And that's because oversized mirrors make a place look bigger and also more light. And then fake plants brings the outdoors inside. It also adds a pop of color to your listings. They're easy to take care of, and fake plants are pretty good these days. I know some people rag on them, but I like them a lot and I use them in all of my rentals. And if you're looking for more furnishing tips, I will drop a link to my full furnishing list in the comments of this video. And just as a note, I am an Amazon associate, meaning if you buy any of those products off of that list, I'll get a cut. It won't cost you more, it'll just cost Amazon. Amazon will make a little less, and I think that's a good thing, don't you? Okay, so now we're going to move to tip number 3, and my recommendation for tip number 3 is that you reevaluate your rules. What I mean by reevaluating your rules is that you can look at a rule that you have and then articulate it in a way that makes sense to not only you, but to someone else. And I'll give you an example of a rule that I've changed in the last year based off of a personal experience I had. So a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I had rogue tenants, so tenants with problematic behavior that came into my property, and they snuck not 1 but 2 cats into the property. And when I went back into our property over Labor Day, there was a lot of damage. So there was a lot of cat hair in the velvet curtains. The couches had clearly been used to claw up a little bit. It smelled like cat urine. Okay, so then after the fact, when I was doing an evaluation of the property and I thought, how would I prevent this? Well, first off, they snuck the cats in. So it's not like they were allowed to have the cats in. They snuck the cats in, and then after the fact, I found out. Started to test people. So before I would accept them as renters, I would say, you have read the rule about not allowing for cats, correct? And you agree to that? Because I think there's a huge difference between renters pretending they didn't see a rule versus renters consenting and saying, I saw the rule and I'm going to abide by it. Renters that you call out on this, that were planning on breaking the rule, they're not going to tell you that, oh yeah, I was lying, now I'm leaving. You're just not going to hear from them again, and it's not going to feel good, but it is in your interest. So ask people if you have a specific rule before they rent. Just make sure that you have them in writing saying that they're not going to do something. That's not even the point though. The point is how I changed my mind on that rule and how I changed my thoughts on allowing cats. In the past 12 months when we decided to move to Mexico, we were looking at potential renters, and I had a guy that wanted to move in with 2 cats. It's the property that we exited, and it's the property we would return to if we ever returned to the US. And we have a beloved green couch in there that we got during COVID. It took 4 months to deliver. It's probably the most expensive, it's easily the most expensive piece of furniture my husband and I have bought. It's this gigantic L couch, green. We both love it to death. James picked it out, but we both feel strongly about this couch. And so when I got this request, I was looking at the couch and thinking like, if a cat clawed up the cushions or clawed up the wood legs, I would be really upset and distraught about that. But then when I stepped back and thought about what it would cost me to pay the mortgage for a couple of months if it just sat, or if it even just sat for one more month, I would be paying more than half of the cost of that couch. And so then it becomes a risk evaluation of, am I at a bigger risk of losing money over vacancy rates, or am I at a bigger risk of losing money on someone that brings in a cat or sneaks in a cat, and then that cat is rogue and they destroy the couch, and then they destroy the couch in a way that is equal to two months of rental vacancy, because that's really what the couch is worth to me. Once I had that in my head, I did allow cats. And the other reason why I allowed for cats is the same reason that I've allowed for dogs for a long time, which is just that there's a ton of demand for it. And when you look at new home buyer patterns right now, it's like 70% of new, it might even be higher than that. I'll put an infographic on the screen, I'm just not looking at it right now, of new home buyers have pets, and that pets are a major motivator for new home buyers to decide to buy. And that's because they're tired of the hassle of moving from rental to rental and being told that their pets aren't allowed. So in this way, I encourage all landlords to allow for pets, because you'll really increase your renter base with a very low risk to you. That isn't to say that something couldn't go wrong, but again, what we're trying to do is evaluate the size of the risk and go with the situation that presents the least amount of risk to us and the most amount of money, meaning push down vacancies, and we are successfully renting out the property. In addition to allowing for pets, I think people should also reevaluate their attitudes around college kids. I rent to college kids. I love college kids. I think that they're so low key and chill. So reevaluating how you feel about pets, reevaluating how you feel about college kids. I would also say reevaluating how you feel about smokers. When smoking would be a huge deal is if someone smoked with all the windows closed for 10 straight years. That's not going to happen in a 2 or 3 month rental. And again, I'm not encouraging you to take college kids, smokers, or cat owners if you don't want to do this, but there are properties that are corner lots that are beautiful, that are done incredible, and they have no problem, they rent all day. There are other properties that are less desirable, they're just a rental, and so they need to think about, again, those differentiators. So what I talked about in the first segment of this video, thinking about how you're different, thinking about what your market advantage is, and then evaluating how you can be different and how you can stand out from the competition with some kind of benefit that you're comfortable with risk-wise. The good news, if you're extremely anti-smoker, is that we don't have a lot of smokers these days, or they're just doing it in vapes, which not everyone loves, but the smoke damage is not quite the same as the way it used to be. All right, quick plug before we get to our final tip. If you have learned something in this video so far, please like this video. Some resources that you can find on my Stand store for free: a rental lease for furnished rentals, a Air DNA and Furnished Finder report about the state of midterm rentals, and then some other products that I have that are not free, such as prompts that you can put into ChatGPT to learn the groundwork for your local landlord laws, consulting options, etc. And I will drop all of the links in the top comment of this video. All right, our final tip. After this one, I will tell you about my Furnished Finder analogy, which I feel like is helpful when you're trying to evaluate how you want to spend your time on Furnished Finder. So for this tip, you should know if doing a midterm rental makes more sense than running a long-term unfurnished rental, because it's not always the case that it does make more sense. You can make more money on furnished midterm rentals, but you need to evaluate what your costs are going to be. When I was a real estate agent in Denver, I would see this with investors all the time. Investors that had been told that their cash flow needed to be something, and then they would evaluate all these properties and it would be like, the cash flow is not here. And it's like, yeah, for this market, that advice doesn't work. So you need to have a belief system and appreciation, or be motivated by something else, because if you continue to run your numbers and it's not working, that means the numbers don't work. That formula, whatever you're bought in on, does not work for this market. And so if that is super important to you, it's not going to work. And so I feel like sometimes people hesitate to put up listings because they're nervous, or they hesitate to put up listings because the numbers keep saying to them, hey, it's maybe not going to work. And so when you're trying to establish whether or not it makes more sense to do a long-term unfurnished rental or a midterm rental, so a furnished monthly rental. Some items that you should be evaluating or considering are the cost of utilities, so what you're going to have to pay each month in utilities, the cost to furnish the place, and a higher vacancy rate. And if your renters come out of Airbnb and Airbnb takes their fees, you also need to be aware of that. Now, does it still make sense to do a midterm rental versus a long-term unfurnished? And I coach clients on both, but more and more I just think people need to be clear on their numbers or clear on how they want to use the property. So for instance, I have another client that's in California and they want to use the property during high season, but they're okay with that, and they're okay with limited numbers on the property because it's a second home, it's a vacation home. So just doing some back of the napkin math will help you establish if it makes more sense to do a midterm rental, so a furnished rental month to month, or a long-term unfurnished rental where you're going to have a lower vacancy rate and you're actually not going to have to pay for the utilities or the furniture. But on the flip side, you're not going to be able to use the property and you're not going to get the higher rates for different seasons. It'll be much more of a wash for all of the seasons. I'm going to talk about the Furnished Finder analogy, and stick around till the end because I'm actually going to talk about 2 use cases when it would make sense to pursue these leads or to pay attention to these leads. And what I'm talking about is unmatched leads. And the analogy that I use for Furnished Finder, this comes up with my consulting clients when people have rented. So sometimes I'll have consulting clients that will come in for an hour. So they've booked me, the first time we're meeting is this hour-long call. And they'll say, you know, I've been listed for 2 weeks and I haven't gotten any traffic and I don't know what to do. And so like I've been reaching out to the unmatched leads on Furnished Finder. And I think this is a bad use of your time. And the way to explain that this is a bad use of your time is to think about rental platforms as being similar to dating apps. So let's say you are a single woman and you have an interest in heterosexual men and you're located in Denver. The unmatched leads would be like if you just started to go through every single person in Denver, regardless of how they look, regardless of their interests, regardless of how they're indicating in their profile if they want kids, etc. You're just reaching out to anyone with no filter. It's not a good use of your time. Better use of the dater's time would be to clean up their profile and be really clear on the things that they care about. So I want kids. It's important for me to stay local because my family's here. I like cooking and physical fitness is really important to me, right? So in the dating profile, when you clean up your profile and you talk very specifically about what you want, it attracts someone else that thinks they can fulfill that role or those values are important to them too. And so I understand why people go through the unmatched leads on Furnished Finder. It's because they don't have anything else to do. No one's coming in and they're like, well, I'll just do something. But it's actually not a good use of your time. A better use of your time would be to make sure that the listing looks the way it should and also move on to other platforms. And in this case, I recommend Airbnb and Zillow. So Airbnb, Zillow, and Furnished Finder are the top 3 rental platforms I recommend for furnished rentals. I know some people are talking about Booking.com and VRBO too. I have feelings about either of those platforms. I just also haven't had a lot of experience with them. And the reason why I haven't had a lot of experience with them is because I haven't needed to get renters to stay rented to be happy with the numbers that I've been getting. Okay, so earlier I said there's 2 times when unmatched leads actually matter to you. Shout out to a former client of mine named Nadia in Texas, if you were watching. Hi, Nadia. And so she was paying attention to the unmatched leads because it was helping inform Nadia as to what type of property she might want to buy next, because those types of properties have the most demand. And just so you know, it's always going to be a studio, 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. I've had success with 3 bedrooms too. And it's not to say that you can't have success with a bigger rental. It's just that the pool of people that will need that bigger rental is smaller. So if you're looking at unmatched leads, my guess is you'll see that pattern reflected quickly. If you don't, come back and tell me. I don't want to assume something and be wrong, but I think if you pay attention, most people that pay attention, they will see there's a lot of demand for smaller properties versus larger properties. Okay, so that's number 1. And then number 2, the only other time you'd pay attention to unmatched leads is if it is something that you could change. So I had a different client where they had an unmatched lead, and what was not a match is that someone wanted to bring in a pet, a dog. And after thinking about it and looking at the risk to cost ratio, the landlord, so my client, decided they were comfortable taking pets, and so they reached back out to one of the unmatched leads, and it actually did work out for them, and they got a renter. But otherwise, you're not going to reach out to unmatched leads because it's actually not a match. All right, if you've come this far, you may be looking for further resources on rental platforms that cater to furnished rentals for month to month or rentals for long-term unfurnished. Regardless of your intent, I've made some videos about these 2 different platforms and how to use them and have success on them. Hope that helps, and I hope that helps. And for all of my lazy and ethical landlords, I hope you find great renters soon and that you continue to enjoy having a small business or a business of rental properties. Thank you.